I stood at the door, hesitant to enter. I hadn't seen my grandson in 10 years. The last time we spoke, he was a teenager, and now he was a grown man. I had heard rumors that he was struggling, but I had no idea what to expect. The door creaked as I pushed it open. I was met with a sight that made my heart sink. The apartment was a mess, with clothes scattered all over the floor, and dirty dishes piled up in the sink. It looked like John hadn't cleaned in weeks. My grandson, John, sat on the couch, staring at his phone. He didn't even notice me. I walked over to him and cleared my throat. He finally looked up, startled. "Grandpa," he said, his voice shaking. "John, it's been a long time," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I've been worried about you." John looked away, avoiding eye contact. "I'm fine, Grandpa. I just need some time to get my life together." I sat down next to him on the couch. "John, I know you're not fine. I've seen the stack of unpaid bills on the counter. Asterisk you owe $75,000, asterisk, I said. Asterisk how did this happen, John, asterisk. His eyes dropped, and he whispered, asterisk I was scammed, asterisk I felt a wave of anger wash over me. Who could have done this to my grandson? I took a deep breath and tried to remain calm. Tell me what happened, John. I want to help you. John looked up at me, tears in his eyes. I invested in a business, Grandpa. I thought it was a sure thing, but it turned out to be a scam. I lost everything. I felt a pang of regret. Why hadn't I been there for him? Why hadn't I warned him about the dangers of investing in unknown businesses? I put my arm around John's shoulders. We'll get through this together, John. We'll figure out a way to pay off this debt and get your life back on track. But as I looked around the apartment, I knew it wouldn't be easy. The debt was just the tip of the iceberg. There were deeper issues at play, and I was determined to get to the bottom of them. I stood up and walked over to the counter. I picked up the stack of unpaid bills and began to sort through them. Asterisk we need to make a plan, John asterisk, I said. Asterisk we need to pay off this debt and get your life back on track, asterisk. John nodded, a look of determination on his face. I'm ready, Grandpa. I'm ready to face this and move on. I smiled, feeling a sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could turn things around. Maybe we could overcome this debt and start anew. But as I looked at John, I knew that this was just the beginning. There were more challenges ahead, and I was ready to face them head-on. I was ready to fight for my grandson and help him overcome this difficult time. And that's where our journey begins. The journey to pay off the $75,000 debt and get John's life back on track. It won't be easy, but I'm determined to see it through. Stay tuned for the next part of our story. I spent the rest of the day helping John sort through the bills and making a plan to pay off the debt. We made a list of all the creditors and the amounts owed, and I was shocked to see that some of the debts were from credit cards with interest rates as high as 30%. I couldn't believe that John had gotten himself into such a mess. As we worked, I couldn't help but think about how this had happened. John had always been a smart kid, and I had taught him the importance of being responsible with money. But somehow, he had let things spiral out of control. As the day went on, I started to feel a sense of unease. Something wasn't adding up. John seemed genuinely remorseful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something from me. I decided to push him for more information. John, can you tell me more about this business you invested in? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. John hesitated, looking uncomfortable. It was just a small startup, Grandpa. I thought it had a lot of potential. But what made you think that? I pressed. Did you do any research on the company before investing? John shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I don't know. I just trusted the guy who was running it. He seemed really confident and knowledgeable. I raised an eyebrow. And you didn't think to check into his background or do any due diligence on the company? John looked down, his voice barely above a whisper. I was stupid, Grandpa. I let my emotions cloud my judgment. I wanted to make some quick money and impress my friends. I sighed, feeling a mix of emotions. I was angry that John had been so reckless, but at the same time, I felt sorry for him. He had made a mistake, and now he was paying the price. But as I looked at John, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Something wasn't quite right. I decided to do some digging of my own. I pulled out my phone and started searching for information on the company John had invested in. As I scrolled through the results, my eyes widened in shock. The company didn't exist. At least, not in the way John had described it. It was a shell company, set up to scam people out of their money. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. John had been lied to, and I was determined to find out who was behind it. John, I need to ask you something, I said, my voice firm. Do you remember the name of the guy who ran the company? John thought for a moment before nodding. Yeah, his name was Ryan. I nodded, making a mental note of the name. I'm going to look into this, John. I'm going to find out who Ryan is and what he's been up to. John looked up at me, a mixture of fear and hope in his eyes. Grandpa, be careful. I don't know what kind of people we're dealing with here. I smiled grimly. Don't worry, John. I can take care of myself. And I'm going to make sure that Ryan pays for what he's done to you. As I stood up to leave, I couldn't help but feel a sense of determination. I was going to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. And I was going to make sure that John got the justice he deserved. But as I walked out of the apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in over my head. I was dealing with people who had no qualms about scamming others out of their money. And I had a feeling that they would stop at nothing to keep their secrets safe. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I was ready to fight for John, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, and I would have to be careful if I wanted to come out on top. As I walked away from the apartment, I couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. Would I be able to uncover the truth and bring Ryan to justice? Or would I become the next victim of his scam? Only time would tell. I spent the rest of the day researching Ryan and the company he was involved with. I scoured the internet for any information I could find, but it seemed like Ryan was a ghost. There was no social media presence, no online profiles, and no records of him being involved in any legitimate businesses. I was starting to get frustrated, but I knew I had to keep digging. I decided to pay a visit to the local business bureau, hoping they might have some information on Ryan and his company. As I walked into the office, I was greeted by a friendly receptionist who asked how she could help me. I explained my situation, and she nodded sympathetically. I'm so sorry to hear that, sir. Let me see what I can find out for you. She tapped away on her computer for a few minutes before turning back to me. I couldn't find any information on a company by the name of, well, actually, I couldn't find any information on a company that matches the description you gave me. I frowned, feeling a sense of unease. What do you mean? I mean that it's like the company doesn't exist, she said. I couldn't find any records of it being registered, and I couldn't find any information on a person named Ryan being involved in any businesses in the area. I thanked her for her time and left the office, feeling more frustrated than ever. I was starting to think that I was in way over my head. But I was determined to get to the bottom of things, no matter what it took. I decided to pay a visit to some of the other people who had invested in Ryan's company, hoping they might have some information that could help me. As I walked into the first investor's office, I was greeted by a nervous-looking man who seemed hesitant to talk to me. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, before I had even asked him a question. "I invested in a company, and I lost my money. That's all I know." I pressed him for more information, but he just shook his head and told me he didn't know anything. I left his office feeling frustrated and confused. Why was everyone being so secretive? What were they hiding? I visited several more investors, but they all seemed reluctant to talk to me. It was like they were scared of something, but I didn't know what. As the day drew to a close, I decided to pay a visit to John's apartment and see if he had any more information that could help me. As I walked in the door, I saw that John was sitting on the couch, staring at his phone. "Hey, Grandpa," he said, looking up at me. "I've been trying to reach you all day. I found something that I think might be important." My heart skipped a beat as I sat down next to him. "What is it?" I asked, feeling a sense of excitement. John handed me his phone, and I saw that he had received a text message from an unknown number. The message read, "You're getting close to the truth. Back off before it's too late." I felt a chill run down my spine as I read the message. Who was sending these messages, and what did they want from us? I looked at John, and saw that he was pale and shaken. "Don't worry, John," I said, trying to reassure him. "We'll get to the bottom of this. We won't back off until we find out what's going on." But as I looked at the message again, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. We were in this deep now, and I didn't know if we would be able to get out alive. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down, but my mind was racing with questions. Who was sending these messages? What did they want from us? And what did they mean by getting close to the truth? I looked at John, and saw that he was still shaken. "We need to be careful, John," I said. "We don't know who is sending these messages or what they're capable of." John nodded, his eyes wide with fear. "I know, Grandpa. I've been getting these messages for days. I didn't know what to do." I felt a surge of anger and frustration. Why hadn't John told me about these messages before? But I pushed those feelings aside and focused on the task at hand. "We need to report this to the police," I said. "We can't just sit back and do nothing." John nodded, and we quickly called the police and reported the threatening messages. The officer who answered the phone took our statement and promised to send someone over to take a report. As we waited for the police to arrive, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Who was behind these messages, and what did they want from us? The police arrived a short while later, and we gave them a full report of the messages. They took our statement and promised to investigate, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were in over our heads. As the police left, I turned to John and said, "We need to be careful, John. We don't know what we're dealing with here." John nodded, his eyes still wide with fear. "I know, Grandpa. I'll be careful." I nodded, trying to reassure him. "We'll get through this, John. We just need to be careful and stay one step ahead of whoever is behind these messages." But as I looked around the apartment, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. We were being watched, and I didn't know by whom. I decided to take matters into my own hands and started to investigate on my own. I began by searching for any information I could find on Ryan and his company. I scoured the internet, talked to people in the neighborhood, and even went to the local library to see if I could find any information on the company. As the days went by, I started to piece together a timeline of events. It seemed that Ryan's company had been involved in a number of shady dealings, and I suspected that he was behind the threatening messages. But I still didn't have any concrete evidence, and I knew I needed to be careful. I couldn't just accuse someone of sending threatening messages without proof. As I continued to investigate, I started to notice strange things happening around me. I would see people lurking around the apartment building, and I would receive strange phone calls with no one on the other end. I knew that I was getting close to the truth, and whoever was behind the messages was getting desperate. I decided to take my investigation to the next level and started to follow some leads. I went to the local business district and started asking questions. I talked to people who had invested in Ryan's company, and I started to get a sense of the scope of the operation. It was bigger than I had thought, and I realized that I was in over my head. But I couldn't back down now. I had to see this through to the end. As I walked back to the apartment, I noticed a car following me. I quickened my pace, but the car kept pace with me. I knew I had to get out of there, fast. I ducked into a nearby alleyway and lost the car, but I knew I couldn't stay hidden for long. Whoever was behind the messages was closing in, and I needed to be careful. I quickly made my way back to the apartment, my heart racing with every step. I knew I had to be careful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. As I entered the apartment, I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. John was sitting on the couch, looking up at me with concern. "Grandpa, what's wrong?" he asked. I shook my head, trying to process what had just happened. "I think we're in trouble, John," I said. "I was followed by a car, and I think it's connected to the messages." John's eyes widened, and he jumped up from the couch. "What are we going to do?" he asked. I took a deep breath and tried to think clearly. "We need to get out of here," I said. "We need to find a safe place to hide until this blows over." John nodded, and we quickly started packing our bags. We didn't know where we were going, but we knew we had to get out of the apartment. As we left the apartment, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. We were being hunted, and I didn't know by whom. We made our way to a nearby hotel, where we checked in under a false name. I knew it was a temporary solution, but it was better than staying in the apartment. As we settled into the hotel room, I started to think about our next move. We couldn't stay hidden forever, but I didn't know what else to do. I was starting to feel like we were trapped, with no way out. Just as I was starting to feel hopeless, my phone rang. It was a blocked number, but I answered it anyway. "Hello," I said. "You're a hard man to find," a voice said on the other end. I recognized the voice, but I couldn't quite place it. "Who is this?" I asked. The voice laughed. "You'll find out soon enough," it said. "Meet me at the old warehouse on 5th and Main at midnight. Come alone." The line went dead, and I was left staring at my phone in confusion. Who was behind this, and what did they want from me? I looked over at John, who was watching me with concern. "What is it, Grandpa?" he asked. I shook my head. "I don't know," I said. "But I think we're running out of time." I looked at my watch, my mind racing with thoughts of the mysterious phone call. It was already 11:45 p.m., and I knew I had to make a decision quickly. I couldn't just ignore the message, but I also couldn't put John in danger. I looked over at him, and saw that he was watching me with a mixture of fear and concern. "What is it, Grandpa?" he asked again. I took a deep breath and tried to think clearly. "I have to go to a meeting," I said. "But I don't want you to come with me." John's eyes widened in alarm. "What's going on?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I think it's connected to the messages. I have to go and see what it's about." John nodded, but I could see the fear in his eyes. "Be careful, Grandpa," he said. I nodded, trying to reassure him. "I will," I said. "I promise." I quickly got dressed and headed out the door, my heart racing with anticipation. As I made my way to the old warehouse, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. What was I walking into? Who was behind this mysterious message? I arrived at the warehouse at midnight, my heart pounding in my chest. The building was dark and deserted, but I could see a figure waiting for me in the shadows. As I approached, the figure stepped forward, and I saw that it was Ryan. "Welcome, Grandpa," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I see you're right on time." I glared at him, trying to keep my temper under control. "What do you want, Ryan?" I asked. Ryan smiled, a cold and calculating smile. "I want to make you an offer," he said. "I want to give you a chance to get out of this alive." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite myself. "What are you talking about?" I asked. Ryan leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm talking about the truth," he said. "I'm talking about what really happened to your grandson's money." I felt a surge of anger and frustration. "You're the one who scammed him," I accused. Ryan nodded, his smile growing wider. "Yes, I am," he said. "But I'm willing to make it right. I'm willing to give you back the money, and let you and your grandson walk away from this alive." I was taken aback by his offer, but I knew I couldn't trust him. "What's the catch?" I asked. Ryan's smile grew even wider. "Oh, there's always a catch," he said. "But I think you'll find it's worth it. Are you interested?" I hesitated, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to take the money and run, but another part of me knew that I couldn't just let Ryan get away with this. I looked at him, trying to read his expression. "What's the catch?" I asked again. Ryan leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The catch is that you have to do something for me," he said. "Something that will require great courage and determination." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite myself. "What is it?" I asked. Ryan's smile grew even wider. "I'll tell you when the time is right," he said. "But for now, let's just say that it's something that will change your life forever." I stood there, frozen in shock, as Ryan's words hung in the air. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was offering me a chance to get out of this alive, but at what cost? I thought about all the times I had tried to protect John, all the times I had tried to keep him safe. And now, Ryan was offering me a chance to save him, but at the cost of my own dignity and self-respect. I looked at Ryan, and I saw the smug, self-satisfied look on his face. He thought he had me right where he wanted me. But I had news for him. I was not going to take his deal. I was not going to sell my soul to save my grandson. I was going to find another way, no matter what it took. I stood up straight, and I looked Ryan right in the eye. "No," I said. "I won't do it." Ryan's smile faltered, and he took a step back. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean that I won't take your deal," I said. "I won't do whatever it is you want me to do. I won't sell my soul to save my grandson." Ryan's face turned red with anger, and he took a step closer to me. "You're making a big mistake," he said. "You're going to regret this." I stood my ground, even though my heart was pounding in my chest. "I'm not afraid of you," I said. "I'm not afraid of what you can do to me. I'm going to find a way to stop you, no matter what it takes." Ryan's face twisted with rage, and he lunged at me. But I was ready for him. I stood my ground, and I fought back. I fought back with every ounce of strength I had, and I fought back with every trick I knew. I fought back, and I won. Ryan was taken away, arrested and charged with his crimes. And I was left standing, victorious, but scarred. I had been through hell, but I had come out on top. I had saved my grandson, and I had saved myself. I had found a way to overcome the odds, and I had found a way to triumph over adversity. And as I stood there, basking in the glow of my victory, I knew that I would never forget this feeling. I would never forget the feeling of standing up for what was right, and fighting for what I believed in. I would never forget the feeling of being a hero. And as I looked over at John, who was watching me with tears in his eyes, I knew that I had done it for him. I had done it for my grandson, and I had done it for myself. I had done it to prove that I was still a force to be reckoned with, that I was still a man to be feared and respected. And as we hugged each other tightly, I knew that I had finally found my happy ending. I had finally found my closure. I had finally found my peace.